Welcome to the School Transportation Nation podcast, episode 7, brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. I am Tony Corpin, publisher of STN, also with my co-host, Mr. Ryan Gray.
Thanks for joining us today, everybody.
Hey, great to have you, Ryan. Ryan is all-knowing as our editor-in-chief here at School Transportation News, and I always have lots of questions for him, and he's got to have a lot to share here up in the podcast. And we have a very special guest joining us today on the podcast. We have David Horsager, who is a best-selling author and speaker at STN Expo. He spoke also at our show in Indianapolis, STN Expo Indy, and he's docketed to speak at STN Expo Reno on July 12th, and he's also taking part in our Transportation Director Summit as a leadership consultant to take our directors to the next level. David will be talking to us on the importance of trust when schools reopen post-coronavirus. You won't want to miss this, so stay tuned. I'm going to be switching over to Ryan Gray, asking him lots of questions today. So first off, Ryan, I want you to take us through the state of education and what it means for transportation departments.
It's evolving. We'll say that. I was a member of a webinar this past week that was produced by TransFinder, of course, our illustrious sponsor of this podcast, and they brought together several media outlets, School Transportation News being one of them. And we also had District Administration Magazine, Ed Tech Magazine, and School Bus Fleet talking about education and transportation and kind of how things are transpiring. So as we know, not a lot of answers right now. Slowly, states are trying to start reopening. We've gotten that word here in California. They have about 4 or 5 phases, and the first one is just starting. And schools, though, are not on the list yet. This is downstream a little bit. We did hear last week that LA Unified, they announced their start date for the 2020-21 school year. August 18th, which is probably around the time that they were originally scheduling to do it anyways. But the big takeaway is they don't know if there's going to be in-class instruction. Hence, they don't know if there's going to be school busing. They've committed to online for now. That's what they know is going to happen. It might be some kind of hybrid model. They're working with public health officials at UCLA to try to determine the best way to reopen, what they need to do. So we know that physical distancing requirements are going to be staying at the forefront probably for the next year, I would imagine, at least 6 months. We're anticipating another phase or another outbreak in this coronavirus thing in the fall. So I think everyone's taking a measured approach. And really what we talked about was some of the issues that are in front of transporters and educators right now. And my big takeaway was that, and this was also in speaking with several student transporters this week, as well as others that are aligned to the industry. And amid all of the scenario planning that's going on right now and taking place, we need to be realistic, right? And with very few answers right now and literally weeks ahead of us, even though it's here, mid-May, the new school year is not that far off. And normally right now, schools would be well on their way with their plans, at least initial plans for the new school year. And knowing that what they had this past school year worked, fixing what didn't, they were already ahead of the game. Everything came to a standstill this past month and a half, 2 months. So a lot of them are really starting from scratch, and again, with very little guidance on what they can and can't do. So amid all of the conversation about how are we going to seat kids on the bus, how are we going to screen them, how are we going to have to adjust our bell times to adjust for new routing or community hubs? Ryan Hahn was on this podcast last week talking about utilizing the school bus for total school community health. But before we get there, we need to know how and if the school buses can actually run. Ryan Hahn was actually telling me this past week that after the podcast, he was sitting down with a client of his at a school and was talking with the CFO, and the CFO was laying out all these scenarios and, liability and everything. And Ryan turned to him and said, then maybe you need to park the buses. And that's a growing reality that I think a lot of student transporters are starting to look at, warily so. But this is a new age in school transportation. A lot of folks are talking about, if school buses do run, who do we absolutely have to transport? And really, those are our at most risk students. Those are the students with special needs and disabilities. Those are students that are protected by the McKinney-Vento Homeless Education or Homeless Assistance Act, foster kids. We know that the ESSA reauthorization really opened up protections for them under McKinney-Vento. A lot of school districts have a lot of Title I transportation as well. So it's really those children that really need those services that perhaps the industry needs to focus on. And this has been a conversation that's not new. This has been going on for at least a decade or more. But really, as in all walks of life, we're seeing coronavirus force us to evolve and force us to make hard decisions, to recalibrate, if you will. So that's really kind of a message that's ongoing right now amid all of this planning that everyone's trying to do.
Well, Ryan, it sounds like you've been busy gathering
yes.
data, information, your editorial team. You're talking to a lot of TDs, a lot of consultants. They're assessing, what they need to do for their operation. I know we're surveying our readers and really gathering insights. You want to share some of those insights that you're seeing, kind of what some of the readers are telling us? What's that data look like?
Yeah. So late last week, we did send out a new reader survey. And as of this recording, we had over 225 respondents already in just a matter of a couple of days. And yeah, we asked them questions on, what are they doing? What kind of task forces are being implemented in their district? Is transportation a part of those? And so already we're getting some really interesting responses. And a lot of it is validating what I was mentioning earlier about some schools, districts are looking at this and saying, hey, this is not making much sense. And actually, I was speaking the other day to Peggy Burns, who a lot of our listeners will know, one of our illustrious TSD tenured faculty members, was a longtime school attorney in the Denver area and then had her own consultancy. She was telling me, hey, Ryan, we're trying to recreate the wheel in a matter of weeks, months, and we need to really, take a hard look at things. So amid that, we're asking districts what they're currently doing. We ask them, again, are task forces being implemented to start trying to scenario plan all across the district? Most of the readers are telling us those are taking place. And we asked, is transportation involved? And the good news is 80% are saying yes, transportation is involved, because obviously transportation literally drives education every day, gets so many kids to and from school, but with that, a ton of challenges. So about 68% are saying they're looking really hard at transporting fewer students on routes. Obviously, we have the physical distancing requirements that are in place, but also too, I think this speaks to what I was mentioning earlier about looking at students that absolutely have to have transportation. And in some states that have transportation required, unlike a California, for example, which has already been, focusing on special ed and homeless and Title I, a lot of districts are looking at that, and they may need to try to affect some kind of regulatory change in their states. So now's the time. And again, there's just not a lot of time to do these things. We have about a little over half, 55%, that are looking at transporting different grade levels of students on different days or at different hours. So for example, we've heard from some districts that they're looking at taking kindergarten through fifth grade on Mondays and Wednesdays and maybe doing a half day. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, having the middle schoolers. Others have said, when high school, we're going to keep those completely online. 37% are looking at changing bell times to try to address all the challenges and, how we're going to screen all these kids. I mean, just imagine trying to go to an apartment complex where you're normally picking up 20 kids in one fell swoop and get them all on the bus. Are you staggering them, or how are you taking their temperatures? 22% again said they're looking at only transporting special education students or a select group of students. 12% are looking at developing centralized hubs where parents would drop off their children and transportation would then pick them up. And then what's really telling is 20% said some hybrid model of learning, or more so even than those, no changes are known so far, or they're just flat unsure. So, a lot of hand wringing out there, a lot of head scratching still. So, just a ton of questions.
Well, part of all the planning and the physical distancing, I mean, it's almost impossible, right? If you're trying to prepare for every contingency, and everybody's just in a place where, like, what do we do? I mean, we run into that too. How do you plan your business? How do you do that? Well, all you can do is move forward, right? You have to just really look hard and just say, how do we move forward? And you can't live in a box, right? You can't live by the old rules anymore. You got to kind of toss those out and say, we got to start anew here. And those are really big things. And, I think what's really hard too is, how does that affect our school bus drivers? How does that affect our contractors, our staffs? What's the impact to them? And how do we move forward with people? And what's the kind of the effect of that? And with COVID, what's the wake that's caused, and the impact to all the people within that ecosystem, if that's the families or the staffs that support the systems and transportation. So I think it's really interesting. I mean, Ryan, what are we seeing in terms of that wake?
Well, back to that same survey, half of our readers are saying that they have neither enough drivers or buses to accommodate this new normal service, whatever that might be. So you're exactly right. This is affecting school bus drivers and continues to. Actually, during the webinar, there was a comment made about how this actually could help the driver shortage that has been plaguing the industry for a good 10 years. And there is some validity to that. Speaking with a student transporter earlier today, and he was mentioning to me that, with this focused school busing on these certain, groups of students, the special ed and the homeless in particular, if you're focusing your routes just on those, then a lot of districts will have enough drivers, because if they cut out the quote unquote, general ed. So, we're seeing just a lot of pressures right now. And as district administrations are trying to figure out what their next steps are, again, school bus drivers are getting caught in the crossfire. And so, that's continuing. I know some of our most popular articles over the past month and a half or so have been on the contractor situation nationwide, where despite some language in the CARES Act and then in several executive orders issued by governors to continue paying on school contracts, especially school bus, districts aren't. And we've talked a great deal about this, and the school attorneys are involved, and it's a language issue. And, that's what the law so many times comes down to. It's these legal ramifications of language. That does not help the school bus drivers, though, who are out of work or have had their hours drastically reduced. Just this past week or two, one of the largest school bus contractors on Long Island closed their doors permanently. 900 drivers permanently laid off. They're going to have to try to find jobs elsewhere, maybe with some school district or some other contractor. But this is not just affecting contractors. Recently, Norfolk Public Schools in Virginia, one of the largest school districts in the state, in the Commonwealth there, they had been one of the many public school districts, that had continued to pay all of their employees. They're running out of money. So they are now furloughing all part-time workers, and that includes school bus drivers. Now, again, a furlough is a little bit better than a complete, shuttering of the school district or the company, and maybe these bus drivers now can get some unemployment that they couldn't previously, because with the CARES Act, of course, it was adding another $600 a week to people's unemployment checks. But that's finite. That's going to run out soon. So, we're seeing this affect all aspects of the industry. Where do we go from here? We need to have a bigger emphasis on trying to train drivers and get relaxed state requirements to allow a lot of that, so that they don't have to have so much in person, at least right now, because that's what we're stuck with. Until we hear more of what these state plans are to reopen, we can't just stop. Like you said, we have to continue moving forward. And that means we have to continue training school bus drivers. We have to continue certifying them as much as possible. DMVs will likely be reopening soon. I know a lot of states, about half, from a recent survey that we did of the state directors, have said that they've extended some kind of waiver or extension for CDLs, as well as the medical certifications that are required by FMCSA, the drug and alcohol testing. But from a safety standpoint, we can't just put that aside. We have to keep the wheels turning. So right now, it's about embracing this new normal as much as possible, looking at what the possibilities are, scenario planning, yes, but also, being proactive and pushing back on districts and on administrations and saying, hey, you guys are coming up with these plans. This is what it's going to cost. If you are saying we're going to be trying to transport all the kids again come August, September, October, whenever that date might be, this is what it costs. And what you're talking about with screening kids, we're going to have to add this many more buses. Do we have the budget for that? In our survey, 60% of our readers said no, they don't have budget for new buses amid all this stuff. So something's got to give. Basically, that's the end all be all of this thing right now. I was talking with a student transporter earlier, and I'd actually been thinking about this myself. I just hadn't verbalized it really yet to most people, at least outside of our organization. But is the people transportation industry slowly starting to evolve to a California plan where they only transport special ed, homeless, and foster care? It's something that unfortunately the industry has to look at. For a long time, it's been every child has to be on a bus. That's the safest way, no doubt. But is it feasible anymore? We've seen a dramatic increase in alternative transportation options over the last decade or two, and the rise of transportation network companies. And with everything new, there comes challenges and trying to figure out things, and try to evolve best practices, create best practices. But really, it behooves the industry to really have some hard discussions about this stuff. And it's really unfortunate that the National Congress of School Transportation was canceled this May. It was going to go off here in the next week in Des Moines, Iowa, and they've had to cancel that, and it's going to be next May in 2021. But boy, what a time to have these conversations. So hopefully we'll have some good editorial up in our magazines shortly with the NCST folks to find out kind of what the next steps are. Is there going to be some kind of interim comment period, or the writing committees opening things up again to get a kind of a pandemic public health thing going in their discussions, in their deliberations? So it will be really interesting to see.
Yeah, no, Ryan. I mean, there's a lot going on, and we've got trust expert David Horsager coming up, and I know you're going to interview him. But it really dawns on me that parents are really going to have to trust that these buses are clean, that the schools are safe, and there's just a huge question mark of how to build confidence among the general public, and how do school transportation operations achieve that? And trust is a really big thing, Ryan. Our partner TransFinder has launched their new routing solution, Route Finder Plus, and it's getting great reviews from its trusted clients. It's a web-based and is the most powerful routing tool on the market today. In fact, I just learned that clients are already starting to use Route Finder Plus, and they're starting to route students this upcoming school year, right? They're planning. TransFinder is a great partner, great company. They've been friends of ours for a really long time, and you can learn more about them at transfinder.com. And Ryan, if you remember last week, TransFinder had thrown out a challenge to our listeners to reach out and drop TransFinder an email that they heard about the new Route Finder Plus on this podcast. So make sure and email TransFinder at getplus@transfinder.com. They'll make a $10 donation towards our charity. We'd love to have you guys reach out to them, make them put their money where their mouth is. Again, the email is getplus@transfinder.com. Stay tuned. Coming up next is David Horsager with Ryan Gray talking about trust.
We're back and want to bring in the illustrious David Horsager, author, speaker extraordinaire, founder of the Trust Institute. Some of you might recall the name if you attended STN Expo Indianapolis in June last year. He spoke on the 8 pillars of trust. Well, we're going to have him back this year, hopefully, STN Expo Reno in July. David is going to share with us why trust is indispensable to any business, organization, or school district. Specifically, we want to know what the school bus industry needs to do to build trust right now with parents, their staff, and their administration. David, how are you doing today? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Great to be back. What a treat to be with you in Indy, and I'm looking forward to Reno.
So are we, keeping our fingers crossed. So obviously you're a trust expert, right? Why is now especially an important time to build trust?
So, here's what you think about it this way. When is your fastest opportunity to build trust? Some people would say, well, it's the first interaction, right? No, the opportunity to build trust the fastest is in crisis or recovery. You think of when was George W. Bush the most trusted as president? The week after 9/11. When things are going bad, when things are uncertain, when things are difficult, that's your greatest opportunity if you want to build trust fast. Right then, if you can be consistent then, if you can be clear then, if you can build the 8 pillars then, it accentuates and speeds up all the trust that you have and will gain.
Well, obviously, we are in a huge crisis right now, and this is vital information for transportation officials and representatives. Hopefully, they've built that trust already. But if they're just starting, David, what are some first steps to building trust with parents and students?
Well, as I've talked about before in my first book, everything we do here, first of all, there's 2 sides of the research. And I think, number one, going back to my grad work and that big finding that a lack of trust, the biggest cost you have, the biggest expense you have is a lack of trust. We have to first think bigger about trust ourselves because trust is the root cause and it is the leading indicator. So whether you're transportation, you run a whole host of buses, let's say, or you run one and you're whatever way it is, the number one question everybody's asking about you is not, do I like you? We think it's all about like. It's not. I've got friends I like a lot. I wouldn't trust them to go in business with them for a million years because, I don't trust them. So trust is way higher than being liked. And it is always the leading indicator of anything. So first you have to see the importance of it because, as an example, you never have a leadership issue. The only reason you follow a leader is trust. You never have a sales issue unless it's a commodity. The only reason you buy from someone is trust. It's not an innovation issue. The team, if they trust each other, they share ideas and innovation and creativity goes up. It's not a marketing issue. The only way to increase or amplify a marketing message is increase trust in that message. Even diversity is not ever the core issue. In fact, the biggest Harvard study would show diversity on its own pits people against each other unless there's trust. If you want to enable learning, you have to create trust in the teacher, in the classroom, and on the bus. So when you think about this, first of all, you have to think differently and see trust for what it is. And then second of all, you have to have a way to define it. And that's that 8-pillar framework. In fact, our studies just got revalidated. We put the biggest study out of North America on trust and leadership. And an outside university just this week sent us a triangulated revalidation of the 8 pillars as the comprehensive way to build trust. That is clarity. People, your people, if they can be clear now, that is connection. If you can connect with your pupils, your families, think of ways you can connect with them now. That increases trust. If you can be consistent now, so the 8 pillars, or we can put them in your show notes. But maybe I should just share them really quick. They're clarity, compassion, character, competency, commitment to them, connection, contribution, or getting results. I might trust you, you're a compassionate person, but if the bus goes off the road and gets in an accident, you don't contribute the results I wanted, then I don't trust you. And then consistency. These 8, everything falls under these. And of course, we can go a lot of ways. I can speak about these for 8 days, but these 8, everything falls under those as far as building trust with your families, your communities, the pupils, and so on. And I would right now, in this time, focus on clarity. Here is what we're about. We do care about you. And number 2, connect, the connection pillar. Try to stay connected to the schools, the families, and the people that you're serving, because if you can get that connection, trust does not fall as far.
And that translates, directly to the employees as well, because, right now we have a big problem nationwide of school bus drivers not getting paid. It was really affecting the third-party paid contractor side for a long time, and that continues to be an issue. But we're seeing that at public school districts now as well. This translates directly to a peer-to-peer or a supervisor-to-peer level, right, of providing that clarity.
It undeniably does. And here's the challenge. Some of those supervisors, they can't do anything about it. Like it might be even further up that's saying, well, we're not going to pay them, but you have to honor our contract. There's a lot of inconsistencies, of course, that are losing trust. And of course, if they do the untrustworthy thing, they're going to lose trust. So you have to think, everybody in here has to think, what can they do? I have this funny thing that happens to me after I speak a lot. Sometimes I'm signing books in the back of the room, and people come up to me and say, oh man, I love that trust stuff. I've never seen trust like that. And, I wish my boss would have been there. They really need this stuff. Or I wish my spouse would be here. Or my teenagers need this stuff. And the truth is, they're not here. They can't do anything about it. So you can. So you have to think, if you're a supervisor that, let's say, is, or wherever you are, basically, you just have to think, what can I do? What can I do in the role that I'm in right now? And there are things you can do. There's always more than you think you can do. A friend of mine was in War College in the 1980s. He was dropped into the front lines of Afghanistan on the sand from a helicopter. And he was scared, and he didn't know. He said, there's nothing in the college, the U.S. Army War College, that prepares you for that. Totally. You go through all this preparation, but you don't ever know what it's really like to be thrown in enemy territory with a few other people on the sand. But we got taught this, and my mind went back to it. He said, we got taught VUCA, V-U-C-A. V stands for volatility, U stands for uncertainty, C stands for complexity, and the A stands for ambiguity. And he just said, basically, the thing is you stop and you become aware of the uncertainty you're in. And the truth is, we are in uncertain times. We all know it. We've talked about it. We haven't been here before. We're on this sand in the front lines. And then he said, then once you just are aware, okay, I haven't felt this way before. I don't know what this is like. Then we ask 2 questions. And one, we ask, what can I do? What can I do? Because there's what can I control about this? And there are things you can control. You're a bus driver, there's something you can control. You're a supervisor, there's something you can control. You can't do anything if your higher management is saying, we're not going to pay, we are going to pay. I mean, you can go to them, you can stand up for people, but you have to do what you can control. Number 1 question they asked in the front lines was, what can I control? Because there's more than we think. And then number 2, what should I do first? So right now in this time, say, what can I control about this? And what should I do first? And then at least you come with something. Maybe it is going to your people with just the why that pay is happening like this, or the why that school bus, because sometimes, a lot of times in change and in crisis, people aren't so upset that there's change. We actually are more used to change as humans than people think. What they're upset about is nobody shared why they're doing it this way. Why are you doing this? You said you're holding us to this contract and you're not paying this, or you're, whatever the situation is. But if you can help explain why, a lot of times you'll maintain, and maybe even increase trust in that crisis.
Great message. I hope that all our listeners out there, if you can make it to Reno, hopefully again we can pull this off. David is scheduled to speak on Sunday, July 12th, which is a great day in the history of the world, as it's also my birthday. So it would be a personal present for everybody could show up. But there will be some great things, and just from this talk, David, you've provided a lot of insights on just trying to cut through some of that uncertainty and control, like you said, what you can control, and try to share that message, the why behind it. Appreciate it, David. Thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedule. We look forward to hopefully seeing you in July. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be there. It was so fun to meet so many of the folks last time, and I'm really excited to be there with some new stuff.
Hey, and stay safe and healthy too.
You too.
All right.
Ryan, that was a great interview with David Horsager on trust. Really appreciate you taking the time there to talk to him. Our tech tip this week is brought to you by Zonar Systems, a leader in smart fleet management. School buses are preparing to carry kids again here real soon. Lots of scenarios going on, so you better be ready. Protect everyone on board by making sure buses are sanitized properly. Zonar's patented EVIR inspection system features a cleaning protocol that includes 3 interior zones, wiping down high-touch areas like handrails and cleaning seats, walls, windows, and aisles. A typical bus fits 2 students per seat, so let's keep everyone safe and help parents feel secure. Learn more at zonarsystems.com/restart. That's zonarsystems.com/restart. Well, friends, I want to thank David Horsager, Ryan Gray, and our partners TransFinder and Zonar Systems for sponsoring the podcast today. Thank you to our listeners. We hope you found this information insightful. Subscribe, stream, download the School Transportation Nation podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. We love those. They're greatly appreciated. Also, don't forget to visit us on stnonline.com for all the great coronavirus coverage and everything on school transportation. You can get more information about the upcoming STN Expo, July 10th through the 15th, and where David will be speaking with us. Check out stnexpo.com. Stay safe. We'll see you next week.